What is an IP address? This time on seniorgeek.net. Good question, complicated answer, but we're going to break it down here for you. What does IP stand for? It stands for Internet Protocol Address. And all Internet Protocol means, all it refers to is the technology that the web, the big network that is the web, uses to decipher IP addresses. What is an IP address? I'm not going to describe this the way a mathematician would or a computer engineer would. We're going to keep it as simple as possible. Think of an IP address as a telephone number. That's going to be the basis for my analogy this time around. Just keep that in the back of your mind for a moment. Now look at this array of numbers here. An IP address, as we know them now, again, there are other details that we'll discuss in other segments, are made up of a maximum of 12 digits in 3 positions, all separated by dots. So you can have as many as 12 numbers with dots. You can have as few as 4 numbers, again, each position separated by a dot, or a combination thereof. So IP addresses can look like anything or a combination of these particular examples here. All right? Now think again, telephone number. And to keep things simple, keep in mind that every device on the web, that is a huge network, the web, has its own telephone number. Now think of 2 telephones. Think of picking up a telephone, whether it be a smartphone or a regular landline, and you're calling another telephone. Your device has a telephone number, and the other device, the destination device, has its own telephone number. Okay? So you dial that number and you connect to the other device. This is essentially the currency, if you will, of the web. And the web operates with numbers. Human beings operate with letters because they're easier to remember than numbers are. Words, expressions. Okay? Now, let's give you an example. Let's say I open a tab here in my browser and I type facebook.com. And here I am, facebook.com. Let's say I open another tab here now, and I type the magic numbers, 31.13.71.36. That is an IP address. You see, this one happens to have 8 digits. And I click enter. I'm at Facebook. The digits I just typed, and I'll go back and show them to you again, happen to be the IP address of facebook.com, where I am in the world. Now, just as a quick aside, Facebook has more than one IP destination address, more than one phone number, if you will, more than one phone. That's a technical explanation we'll get into in another segment. But for the purposes of demonstration, this is how it works. Now, when you type in facebook.com, what happens? Essentially, I'm going to stick with my telephone analogy here. What you're doing is you're asking the web to look up the telephone number of facebook.com. And that's what the web does in the blink of an eye. We'll discuss the various technologies behind that in other segments. But that's what the web is. Think of it as a huge telephone book. I realize that's a dated analogy too, but it's like having an enormous white pages book. And instead of having to remember these numbers, you simply type in words. The web figures out what the words mean, finds the numbers, and then brings you to the website that you're seeking to visit. So again, 2 telephones connecting. Now, just to close, keep in mind that websites like facebook.com have caller ID. So they know what your IP address is when you're visiting them. Okay? And that carries with it other bits of information which we'll get into in another segment. How can you find out what your IP address is? You can simply Google it. You can simply type in IP address in a Google, in the address bar of your browser. We're using Google here as an example. And it will display your public IP address right at the top there, or right near the top of the results. Now, I've blurred out some of the digits in my address here for privacy purposes, but this will display what Google calls and what is correctly called your public IP address. Again, some technical details are going to be left for another segment in this case, but this is the telephone number, to go back to my analogy, that you present to Facebook.com and other websites when you visit them. Now, you can obtain their IP addresses, but they keep tabs on yours too. So that's what an IP address is. We'll cover more details on that in another segment. Bye for now.